Okay, fine. Today our topic is here access control list. ACL access. Sorry. Yesterday we discussed access control list. Now we'll start our new topic. After this, we'll finish the lab also extended ACL. We haven't finished that lab yesterday. Today we'll try to finish. And now our topic is here NAT. NAT stands for Network Address Translation. Network Address Translation. So what is the requirement for it? What is the requirement for the NAT actually? So in IPv4, we have the limited IP addresses. In IPv4, IP version 4, we have the limited IP addresses. So when the IP started at 1980s, in 1980s, the internet is grown up. That time they will think that this IPv4 is sufficient because here we have the billions of IP addresses at 1 billion something IP addresses we have here 2 to the power of 32. 2 to the power of 32. This many IP addresses we have here. So after some years some years gone, then the 1990s, the internet is growing very fast. In 1990s, internet is growing very fast. Then the time they believe like this IPs, if this many IP addresses, those are not sufficient. These IP addresses not sufficient after the few years after then. So they'll think like this, then they'll create like subnetting concept. Subnetting. In that subnetting, we have they created like private range and public range. In the private and public ranges, they started because of limitations of IP address. It's kind of the temporary, they can resolve the issue for temporary, but after then they will think it's kind of temporary issue only because now also we have the limited IP addresses at public and private. In this range only they started. So after then they established like why IPv6 now came to IPv6. If in this IPv6, if you are giving the for your mobile also entire, which if you are giving the one IP address to one device also, so here the NAT it won't be finished next 50 years. Next 50 years we believe it, because of here we have the 128 bit of IP address. Here we have each bit, the entire bits here we have this many, but here we have only 32 bits, but here we have the 128 bits and billions, trillions IP addresses we have in IPv6. So our NAT till work only here only. NAT is for only IPv4, not for the IPv6. Not for the IPv6. If you are giving the ranges of IP addresses to the each and every device also, it will be work. So limitations of IP addresses, the NAT concept is key. So we'll use for the IPv4 only. So here we have again private range and public range. And what about the private range? Actually, private range is for the LAN users, only for LAN users, whichever, if entire organization will use, if we have like you can assume ABC company, ABC company and XYZ company. ABC company also will use same, and XYZ company also they'll use same IP addresses. ABC company also same, and XYZ Z company also same, and any company, 1, 2, 3 company, any company also same, XYZ, you can assume like dash dash dash. In every organization, at every land side, they will use the range of free of cost, the public IP, whichever the private IP ranges we have. What are the private IP ranges we have here? 10 dot. Now tell me, what are the private IP ranges we have here? In class A, up to, and class B, class B. The range will be class C. The range will be what does it mean? 0.0. In this range we can use, and here in this range, up to in this range we can use free of the cost. And these are the, if that is big organization, they'll use like 10 dot series IP addresses. If small organization, medium, mid kind of size organization, they'll use these things. And if it is small organization, then they'll use the class C IP addresses. So likewise, they'll use the IP ranges.
Alimgar, a small question. Why it is excess in the class C, whereas for the remaining cases it is zero ending?
Here also XX only 0, 0. In right 0 also 0. Here also. What does it mean? They will use from this range. And see, here we have like 16, right? And 17 also. And 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, up to 31. In this range, we can use this many ranges. And here 192, 168, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here the second bit is changing. Here the third bit is changing. Here the third bit is changing. So here only second bit is changing from 0. We have millions of IP address in this. How many? 2 to the power of 24. Here 2 to the power of, you can check like 2 to the power of 16. And here we have the 2 to the power of, sorry. Here 8, 2 to the power of 8, and here 2 to the power of 24. This many ranges will get. Again, 8, 8, 8, sorry, 8, 8, 8 bits, 24. Then only we'll get the large size of value, right? 2 to the power of 8. Only here, only 1 bit, you can assume. This many IP addresses will get the free of cost. And these IP addresses where we'll use basically at LAN side. At LAN side we'll use. And what about if I want to communicate different branches? See, and This one is my LAN and this one is the my LAN. At LAN locations will use mostly private range. That is 192.168 10 dot something. You can take some 24. In this range we have the 255 IP addresses. Here also you can use same 192.168 10 dot 1 and slash 24. The same IP addresses. You can, it's different company, and this one is the ISP, and ISP they will provide this service like one more organization is there. This organization connected to same thing, and one more organization is also connected to likewise, and one more organization, they are connected likewise. Yes, we can use the same IP addresses at LAN location, no issue. Every organization, if you are trying to get in your at your mobile also, in your PC also, just check which IP you are getting from ISP. From ISP, which IP you are getting? How will check those IP addresses? Now move to command prompt. At you in your mobile, just move to go to your command prompt. Just type it IP config. Then you will get the one IP address. That is again the range is 192.168.10.1 only. In this range only. Otherwise, some different range, but the range will be only public IP, private IP address only. So these all are the free of cost. These all are the free of cost. These all are the where we'll use mostly at LAN location. At LAN location. At LAN location, we are using these IP addresses. Now move. So the main concept of NAT is whichever we are using this IP address, this is not routable to internet. Whichever we are using, this is not routable internet. If I want to communicate any different company, if ABC company wants to communicate XYZ company, they are also using same ranges. So how it is possible again? And you can assume like we have the server at one location. This is a FB server, and FB also use like private IP address only. They will also use private range only. They will also use private range only. So the private to private, if we want to communicate with the help of ISP, Internet Service Provider, so basically whichever our private IP addresses are there, those are the not routable to internet. Those are the IP addresses not routable internet. So we need a solution for that also. So with the help of NAT, we can translate from private IP to public IP. Yes, mostly internet, which IP address they will use? Public IP. From I want to communicate through internet, any organization or any application or any, the FB means one kind of organization only. If I want to communicate from my private range to another private range, we need a ISP. Then ISP, what they'll use mostly? Public IP addresses. So with the help of NAT, we'll convert from private IP to public IP. And not only private IP to public IP, we'll convert private to private also. And we'll convert public to public also. Mostly with the help of NAT service, we'll convert one to another. That is different scenarios will in real time you will see. Don't confuse it. If you are getting that task like we have the one server and that is work on the one location that server is there. This is a server. In this server, we have the one private range, and that another server we have one another location. They both are connected with the help of VPN. And this VPN, they wants to communicate with over internet. So we will not use this kind of public IP addresses. Towards we'll use directly default gateway. Default gateway means 0.0.0 and will connect through here NAT in between our real scenarios with the help of private to private NAT also will do. And that is advanced topic, but you should have to know those things also. NAT is not only for the conversions of binding of private to public. It will be binding of public to public also, and uh, private to private also. And mostly will use the whenever you are answering the answer likewise, it will be binding. It will be translate the private to public. Not only likewise will translate entire thing. Mostly will translate one IP to another IP with the help of NAT. But the basic of definition, if someone asks to you, then give NAT is the method of translation private IP address into public IP address. Give the translation likewise. Give this definition, simple definition. But not only the private address to into public IP address, and public to public also, and private to private also. In order to communicate with the internet, we must have registered public IP address. If I want to communicate the internet, we need a one public IP address. If I don't have the public IP address, I cannot reach to the internet, because with the help of, again I am telling, with the help of private IP range, with the help of private IP range, I cannot reach to the internet. The private IP address are not routable on internet. So if I want to routable on internet, I need a one public IP address. In this interface, I need a one public IP address. Then only I can reach to internet. Otherwise, I cannot. Who will assign to me the private IP address? Public IP address, who will assign? ISP will provide to me. ISP guys will be provide to me. How? You can assume this is a port will enable the DHCP server. The DHCP server will enable the automatically ISP will provide to us one public IP address. This is a one scenario, and another scenario ISP to provide to us one range of IP address, that is public IP range. Otherwise, if my organization is big organization, very big organization, then I can buy from directly through IANA, Internet Assigned Number Authority. From IANA, they will who is the providers Internet Assigned Number Authority. IANA will provide to us the public IP addresses. Any doubts?
Can you give example where we have a possibility of converting public to public and private to private, private to public?
That is what simply I have given. This is my server, and another server is at another location. These both are my data centers. This is a data center and another one also data center. These both are my data centers. This is a real time where I have worked earlier. That is I am giving the here real time example. There only I have seen. Here they'll use like one private IP range 192.168.10 one for this interface. And this is the only one host IP address because it's a server. And here one IP address they used. That is private only. 192.168.10. So you can take 20.1 and it's only one IP address, one host only. And in between they use leased line. Leased line means that is one point to another point, another location. In between, no one are there. No one are there. No one they use other because in MPLS, what will be happen? It will be share media. MPLS. It is kind of share media. If this is MPLS services who will use ISP will use, they will provide branch to branch connectivity with the help of share media. They are providing client one, customer two, customer three, and customer four, and customer five. They provide to likewise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Five customer types. They'll provide the same. That is share media with the help of MPLS. It will be possible. And if you are using leased line service, they'll use default gateway, this default gateway to this default gateway in between. If otherwise, you'll use like static IP address also in between. And whichever conversation, if it will be like they can, if you are using virtual private network, it will be tunnel will be created in between. It is kind of underlay service. It is the underlay and it is the overlay. Whichever we are discussing, it is overlay. Overlay and underlay is providing the as reachability. Whichever you are using VPN service, that is overlay. Here, just they will created and point to point connectivity reachable. Everything is reachable, but they need the conversation because I'll show you in lab what is the requirement for the NAT. I'll show you in lab, but here they'll use like here private to private NAT. They'll use they have used like private to private NAT. That is requirement basis. Don't go in depth now, okay, but we can use those scenarios also. If you are going in depth now only, you'll confuse it now, but we'll use NAT is a method of translation private IP address into public IP address. Now just learn this. Later we'll discuss these things where we'll use private to private, but we'll use in real time also. In order to communicate with the internet, if I want to communicate with the internet, we need a public IP address. Without public IP address, we cannot reach. And this is the private ranges we have. Apart from this, 1, 2, 0, it's not working. 1.0.0.0.2, where up to 255.255.255.255. In between, escape, exclude these ranges, all are the public IP addresses only. All are the public IP ranges only. In that we have a class A, class B, class C. Those only we are using. Apart from that, class D, it's multicasting, and class E for the for research purpose. Excluded of these IP addresses, we are having the class A, class B, class C. For those are public range only. Got it? Guys,
Yes.
the actually, the address translation was originally developed to solve the problem. Which kind of problem? to handle the shortage of IP addresses. Those we discussed till now. The handle the shortage of IP address and hide the network addresses, which we are hiding the network addresses, whichever we are using the private ranges. Those it will be hide. How it will be hide? We'll check in lab. Actually, address translation was originally developed to the solve the problem, which kind of to handle the shortage of IP addresses, which IP addresses, IPv4 addresses, and hide the network addresses scheme, whichever we are using the network scheme 192, 168, 10 dot, whichever we are using at our LAN location, it will be hide. Internet cannot see whichever you are using the IP addresses. Bypass those IP addresses. Simply, whichever the information will be translate, packet will be translate from overlay only. They cannot, even they cannot know which IP we are using, which IP scheme we are using at our LAN end. With the help of LAN, it is possible. And it is kind of security also, because the ISP internet service providers and whichever the man in middle attack also, he don't know the whichever we are using the scheme, whichever we are using the IPS scheme, he don't know. It will be over bypass the networks. And mostly small companies will at small companies the IANA will sorry, internet service providers will provide. If the company is large, then who will provide to us? We should have to buy from IANA. Small companies typically get their public IP addresses directly from ISPs. The ISPs will provide to us, which have limited numbers. Because in IPv4 we have the limited limitations. That is the reason you are using the private and public concept. And large companies can sometimes get their public IP addresses from the register authority, that is IANA. They will get from the IANA also if it is big company. Common devices can perform address translation include where we'll use this public actual private ranges, where we'll use at firewall, at routers, at servers, and in these devices we are in whichever the networking devices we are using, those devices the IP address is required. So that is the reason we are using private ranges. There are certain addresses in each class of IP addresses reserved for private network. Those are the 10 dot series and 172 dot series, and those are the private ranges we discussed. These things we discussed till now. And for that, we are translating the from public to private and private to public. The NAT, what it is doing, translating the IP addresses from private to public and public to private. So there we have some types of methods. For that, we have a types of NAT. So first one is dynamic NAT, and second one is static NAT, and third one is PAT, port address translation. First, we'll create here static NAT. We'll discuss static NAT, and dynamic NAT. We'll move to the PAT. What is static NAT? Basically, Guys, do you have any questions?
I think it's one-to-one relation IP address.
Yes, one to one. What does it mean, one to one?
One private network to another public network.
Yes. So one private network to another private public network. It's a public and this one is a private. Public IP if you take that is 11.1.1.1 and 11.1.1.2 and 11.1.1.3, 11.1.1.4 and 11.1.1.5. Likewise, it will be work. It's a one-to-one mapping. One-to-one mapping. If I want to reach from one location to another location, if I want to communicate through internet, I need this kind of range. It will be one-to-one mapping. So here we should have to buy entire pool, entire range, and we are statically defining. We are statically defining your, if you want to reach, this host want to reach. We have like one host and second host and third host and fourth host. First host want to reach, then this IP will give. Second host then will give this range. Third host will give this range. So here the wastage of the public IP range. Here the wastage are the public IP range. So one-to-one mapping is the wastage of public IP range. So nowadays we will not use one-to-one also, one-to-one mapping. But we'll use some cases where we'll use, just now we discussed here, at server to server wants to communicate, then one-to-one mapping is required. Some security reason, server wants to communicate only one server. They will share the entire data because it's a data center. It's a data center and it's a backup data center. It's a DR, disaster recovery. So whichever information this server having and this same information they should have at different location. So one-to-one mapping here will use static NAT mostly. This kind of scenarios will use. Now you got it, Jyoti?
Yes.
This kind of scenarios will use static routing. Static NAT. Static NAT will use. One-to-one mapping between the private address and registered address, whichever the registered address, you can, it will be, might be public or private. Every private IP needs one registered public IP address. One-to-one mapping, 1:1, 1:1, it will be taken, and define the goal of reducing the number of public IP addresses needed for that organization. If it is kind of big organization, they'll use the entire series, entire pool, then they will use this kind of addresses. If it is needed, if they needed, they'll use. It's all about the static NAT. We'll do in lab, there you will get much more thing, but it is one-to-one mapping. Now move to the, any doubts in static NAT? Yes or no?
No.
Now move to the dynamic NAT. Dynamic NAT also same thing, one-to-one mapping between the private address to same public address. Here also same one-to-one mapping only, but will create the one pool dynamically. In that range, it will be take whichever the required the IP address dynamically. If here we have the 255 PCs and here we have the required 255 host. Here we have the 255 host. Then we needed 255 public ranges. That time it will be mapped. If we have here 300 PCs, then apart from that 45 PCs, apart from that, whichever the 45 pieces are there, they will be wait for the till if they are busy with this range, they will wait. Once they are free, that time they will take automatically. We'll verify in the lab. Whenever they are discussing with, they are busy, that time they cannot communicate with internet. These 45 pieces, remaining 45 pieces, remaining 45 hosts. We configured 255 pool. In the 255 pool, it will be take 1:1 IP addresses. If we have here 300 of hosts, in that host 45 remaining 45 hosts waiting list. Once the communication done, then those are free, then this will be assigned to them. We'll verify those things also, but here also same one-to-one, but dynamically they are taking the IP addresses, one-to-one mapping only. One-to-one mapping done automatically by the NAT device. For every private IP needs one registered IP address, 1:1 scenario here also. The private internal IP range network to be defined. Whichever the private range internally will define how many required, we will create that pool. Those pool, based on that, they will get the public range, public IP address, whichever we will create the pool. In that, they will get pool of public global addresses to use for the translation. Those are the, in that pool, they'll get the global public IP range. Dynamically, they'll get the IP address. One time this one, it will be happen likewise. They will get the one time this one on this one likewise. Whichever the free of IP address, it will be get like not only likewise. Dynamically, they'll get private to public NATing. It will be done. And we'll not use the same thing also. Dynamic NAT also will not use in real time. We should have to know. But one more thing is there, that is PAT, port address translation. In real time, we'll use the port only, port address translation. And When it is, we call it as a dynamic NAT overload also, or we'll call it as a port address translation, PAT. Dynamic NAT, otherwise we'll call it a dynamic NAT overload, we'll call, otherwise we'll call PAT. It is kind of maps multiple private networks into one public network. Here not required for the multiple private networks. Here only one is sufficient for entire thing. Here one is sufficient. It will be map multiple private to single public IP address. When the NAT, in this case, only add one port address here. Actually, ports are from starting ranges 12255 35. This is the range. We have the port. Not 65535. In this range, we have one assigned for the 1023. This is the range for the reserved range. Who will use this reserved range? Like FTP, TFTP, and we have the SSH for the 22 and TFTP for the 22, 20 and 21. Telnet is uses the port number is 23, and DNS. Every TCP and UDP, we have the protocol. They will use this kind of port numbers. Those are the well-known ports. This is the range. And this is a reserved range. Apart from that, we have the ranges 10242 and 65535. This is the range. It is randomly they will take, like here in NAT services, they will take random port number and they will assign with the help of, they will assign here like 192.168.10.1024 and 192.168.10.3 and 1025. Randomly they'll take the port number and they'll get, once they are giving the reply, that time how it will be work, I'll show you. See, this is a PC, sorry, switch, and this switch is connected one router, you can assume, and this router is connected to ISP. Our goal is to reach here 192.168.10.1. He hit to internet with the help of, he got one IP address and he got a one port number, that is 24, and he reached to internet. He reached to internet once and giving the reply. This PC will get the same port number only. Once he is receiving the reply from internet, same port number he will receive. And another PC is originating some traffic and here connected, and that IP address is like 192.168.10.2 and the port number like 1025. Randomly it will take, not 24 only, it will be take another range also, 2000 also, whichever the free available, that only. That time it will be get the reply same port number where he planning to, they originated the traffic. Here we have the single public IP, right? Here we have the single public IP. We are originating through this public IP address always. So they don't confuse the internet whom I want to give the reply. So we are using here port translation. So the port translation, it will be take from random port numbers. Whichever the traffic is originating, he will give the reply to that port only. We have another PC and we have the another PC and we have the another PC. In this case, it will be not confused, right? Whenever we are using the one-to-one mapping, in these cases, one-to-one mapping, it will be get whichever originating traffic, it will be give through that public IP address only. But here, the single public IP we have, and that is the reason the whichever the port is originating, it will be give the reply through that port 3, and it will take random port number 3000. Up to range is 65535. It range will be start from here. These are all about the port address translation. Use unique port number mapped a single public IP to differentiate connections. That is the it will be use unique port number. And PAT is the real reason we have not run out of valid IP addresses and internet. That is the reason we are not using valid IP addresses, whichever we are using here. And it will be get based on the port number. Receive the port number. Any doubts till what we discussed? In lab, you will get verification for these things, more detail. Everyone understood? The static NAT is one-to-one mapping and dynamic also one-to-one mapping, but dynamically they are getting the IP addresses. Here, PAT means many public IP address to one many private IP address to many private IP address. Here, many private IP address to one public IP address. Many private to one public. Here one to one, here one to one mapping, but dynamically. You can say group to group also. Here you can group to group also, but it will be dynamically, it will be get in that group only, in that pool only, one pool to another pool in dynamic NAT. If you understood everything, we'll move to the lab.